Hello, this is Sam Hansen with Discus of the Southwest. Today we'll be talking about acclimating your discus when you get it home, whether that's from an online source or whether you get it from a local fish store. So far in our previous videos we've gone over how to feed your discus, what to feed your discus, what size of tanks, what kind of filtration systems, what kind of heaters to use and all that, but haven't gone over the very simplest part of bringing your fish home and what to do with it. And that's what we're going to go over in today's video. So let's get to it. Alright, now it will make a difference on how you acclimate your fish, on whether or not you got it from a local fish store or if you ordered it and they shipped it to you online. The reason is, if you got it shipped to you online, then it's probably stayed in that bag, or it has stayed in that bag for a lot longer time than the 30 or 40 minutes it took you to drive home from the local fish store to your house. So if it's been in a bag for 24 hours or 48 hours, or very likely longer, because let's say if you ordered a fish on Monday, and let's say they really processed everything quick and they shipped it on, let's say, Tuesday, and they told you it was going to be next day, then you get it on Wednesday. That's the very fastest usually most of these places go. So they didn't bag it on Tuesday most likely. They probably bagged it on Monday, took it to the airport and everything maybe Tuesday morning, and if it's shipping via air, then you probably get it maybe that same day. If you shipped it via UPS and they took it to UPS or a FedEx location and they got it in transit that way, and then you wouldn't get it to the next day, so it'd be at least all day Tuesday, most of the day Wednesday, whenever you get it on Wednesday. Maybe you get it at 9 or 10 o'clock, but you can't get it in your water until noon. That happens. So you're talking about a day and a half plus from the time they bagged. It's probably 2 days in the very least. If they shipped it, if they bagged it a day before, sometimes they make it in these bags, again, 24 to 48 hours. So what happens is, when they put the fish in a bag, it's still living and it's still producing waste and everything. Okay, so what is going to happen is it's going to release ammonia, well, different waste that turns into ammonia. Okay, now at the same time it's breathing, it's taking in and respirating CO2, it's taking in oxygen and respirating CO2. Well, that's going to actually work in your favor, because as a CO2 builds up in a bag, the pH is going to lower, and ammonia is a lot less toxic in a lower pH. Okay, so that's the main difference between getting a fish shipped to you online as opposed to just picking it up at the store. When you just run down to the store and pick it up, drive it home, and you get it to your house, it probably has not had time to build up that much CO2, lower the pH, or even build up ammonia either. Also, like my shippers, and very good shippers will, from the time you place an order, they may purge these fish or quit feeding them for 24 to 48 hours before they bag them. So if you ordered on a Monday, they may not actually bag them till a Wednesday and then overnight them to you on a Thursday. That happens quite a bit. The reason is so they do put less waste in the bag so that ammonia doesn't build up as much. A lot of shippers do that. I know the shipper I use, but the shipper I'm using is in a whole other country. They're in Indonesia. So when they bag the fish, they don't feed them for 48 hours before they put them in a bag. That way they just don't put off that much more waste. But they are still respirating and they are still releasing CO2, and there is going to be ammonia released in that bag. But because the pH lowers slowly over the period of time while they're traveling, it is not near as toxic, or it's not as toxic. Let's talk about that. Ammonia, once you go less than 7.0, like 6.8 or 6.5 or 6.0 pH water, the ammonia is bound in a different way. It's not toxic for fish. It's bound into ammonium, and it's just not near as toxic for fish. Okay, so going over that, if you take your fish, and I know there's a lot of places out there on the web that I've seen say, take your fish, float them for a little bit, or put them in a bucket and slowly drip acclimate them for hours at a time. man, that just is not going to work for most discus. Unless you've got it from a local fish shop, because you're going to want your discus out of the bag and out of the water that it's in as fast as possible. Okay, so let me tell you how I do my discus, and I've probably received, if it's not 1,000, it's very close to 1,000 discus in the last few years, and every one of them I've done it this way. What I did is, and you can use anything you want to, but I use a little food tray get at a local restaurant place, and it's the reason I like this because it's long enough. I use a big Brute 44 trash can, and this thing is long enough to fit over the top of that trash can, and I sit on top of the trash can with the lid off, the trash can of course, and sits on top of there, and it's pretty good size. It'll hold quite a bit of water. Now the smallest shipments I get in is usually 50 discus is one of my small shipments. So I'll put this over the top of the trash can, and I'll add some of my tank water to this. Not very much, maybe there is a nice little line on here, it's about halfway. So I'll just add enough water just below here on my tank water, and I'll set it on top of the trash can. And I'll float my discus in their bag that they shipped in. I float it in the tank, depending on how cold it is. Now, shipping from Indonesia, sometimes they come in really cold. So I'll float them in there for at least 15 minutes, sometimes 30 minutes, just depending on how cold they are. If it's real cold, I'll float them longer. If they're not quite so cold, I'll float them for a shorter period of time. But float the discus until the temperature acclimate, okay? And you pull the bag out, don't open it yet, get it right over the top of your pan here, and hold the bag tight at the top, and you just cut the top of the bag and lay the bag over the dish, and just let the discus just slide out of the bag into your dish. Whatever it is you use, whether you use this or maybe a dishwashing tub or whatever, let the discus slide out of the bag on its own and right into your tank water. And you kind of scoop them up with your hand, and if you can fit the discus with its little face kind of towards the palm of your hand, usually they don't flap around too much. They usually are unusually easy to deal with when they come right out of the bag. Excuse me. And you just scoop them up in your hand, and then take them over to your tank and drop them straight in your tank. And that's the way I receive and acclimate my discus. I just do temperature acclimation. There's no sense in trying to acclimate that fish to pH. They don't acclimate to pH in minutes or hours. It takes days, okay? So just temperature acclimate them, drop them into the tank. Now, as you drop them into the tank, you kind of holding them and release them into the tank. If that fish just swims right out of your hand and swims off, great. If he swims off just a little bit and then it looks like he can't keep his balance and it's kind of turning in the water, and again, this is for people that are shipping fish and receiving them online, is if they can't get themselves righted where they're swimming correctly, if they're just swimming, looks like they can't, they're just swimming in circles or whatever, where it's real important to have thought ahead of time. If you're receiving a fish from online, it's always a great idea to have like a little 10-gallon or a small like a 20-gallon or 10-gallon tank set aside. I know it's one more tank to set aside, right? One more tank to have sitting there. But the reason for this is sometimes when they ship, especially if they ship them via air, they're always on the ground on like FedEx, but they're still can't really be on the ground. Because they're going to have, if you're getting them overnight, it's going to have to go FedEx Air or UPS Air or whatever the shipper is. They're going to have to air them. They're going to put them in air cargo. Usually those cargo planes aren't pressurized. They're not always pressurized. So the fish sometimes has a swim bladder issue or something like that that keeps them from being able to swim upright. Don't panic. I've had several fish that are kind of have this going on where they can't swim upright. But if you have a small tank or a 10-gallon or a 20-gallon or even whatever, but you only have about half full of water, then a fish that's not swimming correctly, you can take out of your tank that you just put them in this other tank. Now you got to make sure that water in that other tank is same temperature as your tank you're trying to put them in to begin with. But put them in there with half full of water, and they'll usually within minutes or hours right themselves and can be swimming upright. Okay? Now again, slowly just add water to that tank, and you can just go walk in with a glass of water or a pitcher of water and add it to that tank a little at a time until you get it full. Once you get it full, then that fish, in my opinion, would be fixed and everything. It can probably move over to your main tank. Now, if your main tank is a 100-gallon tank and it's 20 inches deep, then maybe you need to leave them overnight in this other tank. Now, that's another thing, is I would always, I don't care where I got my Discus from, I'd always quarantine my Discus, okay? And like a 20-gallon tank. And whenever you set up and you know you're going to online order a fish, get two 20-gallon tanks. One is your quarantine tank and one is an emergency tank, okay? Fill the emergency tank out halfway with water and have another, enough to fill the tank all the way up, set up as a reserve, but you also get the temperature running on it, okay? So there's the same temperature as your other quarantine tank. So you'll have two quarantine tanks, one half full and one all the way full, okay? Having the same temperature with the same kind of water. Just in case this happens. Now if you're even if you're only ordering one fish, I'd do that just in case you put your one fish in your quarantine tank and it doesn't swim right, you can still get him right quickly into another tank. Now I have done it this way. It works pretty well if you only do one fish, is if he's having problems swimming, then I just siphon my water out of my original quarantine tank I was trying to quarantine him in, siphon it down about halfway, and save that water aside and be able to just put it back in a little at a time once you start swimming upright. That will work too. But if you got like 10 or 20 or 30 fish, or 5 fish, you may not want to do that. You might not want to have your quarantine tank half full just because of one fish. Now, in all actuality, probably work out that way. Probably work out. I always like to have a backup plan, and have a separate tank. So I have 2 tanks. But you can do it with one tank and just drain it halfway, saving that water you just drained out. Or just start off with just a half full tank and just try to acclimate them in the half full tank. That will work too. It'll just be a little bit crowded in there. That's really the most part of it. Now, again, let's go back through this and think about if you've read or seen these other sites and everything that tells you to drip acclimate these guys for like 2 or 3 hours. So let's think about that for a second. First off, who the heck are these people that are telling you to do this? Because most people that ship fish in or that deal with a lot of fish or breed fish, they're doing some sort of shipping, and they just know that about the ammonia building up in those bags, and as soon as you cut that bag, as soon as you expose that bag to air, that the pH is going to start going up, and ammonia is going to, at some point pretty quickly, is going to turn toxic on them in a hurry, and it can kill the fish in the bag before you can ever get them out. Or if you just pour that fish in a bucket, separate bucket, it's still in that water that the pH is gaining, and your ammonia is becoming more and more toxic. It's just, ooh, I just don't like that. I'd rather get them out of the bag fast and get them into fresh water, okay? So let's talk about if you're going to drip them. You basically float them to temperature, acclimate them, and then you're going to cut your bag, expose your bag to air, and then either pour a little bit of water inside the bag, or you're going to like put them in a bucket and hook up a drip line and drip water in there. The whole time, another reason I don't like that is because they're still in the water they were shipped with. That water is getting more and more toxic all the time, and you're just dripping slow drips of water in there. So as they're sitting in that bucket, dripping water in, they're getting colder and colder and colder. Their temperature is getting further away from the tank temperature, because those little drips of water aren't going to be able to keep that water temperature, the temperature of that water up. So if you wait like 2-hour drip, that bucket's going to be way colder than their regular tank when you go to take your Discus out of there and put them in there. And to me, in the past that I've done this, I've seen fish. I mean, temperature acclimation is the most important part. You do not want to take a fish from cold water and put it in hotter water, or vice versa. Either direction is not great. But I just think the temperature you're going to lose in your acclimation thing is going to far outweigh anything you're going to gain at slowly dripping water in on them. I found that the faster you can get them out of the bag, Now, you don't want to just cut your bag and dump them in. That's because you don't want the water in that bag in your tank either. But cut the bag, drop them into another vessel of some sort, another container, and then scoop them out of that container and put them in there. The reason too, if you want a kind of not a real deep container, is you don't want to be chasing the fish around inside of whatever container you had. If you've got a real thin container, a real shallow container like this, that fish is not going to be able to get away from you. Basically, you just reach in there and scoop him up and move him over and drop him in. Don't worry about your hands. Your hands far easier to take, far softer and everything than any kind of net you're ever going to try to drop them into. And it's another deal. I don't like dropping discus into nets, because a lot of people do the same thing. They'll float the fish and then take it out, cut the top, and then take a net and hold it over a bucket and pour the fish into the net, letting the water go through the net into the bucket, and then you have the fish in the net, and then you go and drop them in a bill. That's fine for Danios or I don't know, any number of different fish, but with fish with nice fins and trailing fins and things on them that are real delicate, I don't like to see that, because they can damage those fins, even damage their gills and stuff. So just scooping them up with your hand and putting them straight in there and not dropping them into a net is another reason I like to do it that way. Is it's just going to damage the fish. You're going to have a lot less issues with damaged fish and things like that. Anyway, appreciate you hanging out with me during this video, and I got a little long-winded. Excuse me. Long-winded and probably a little longer than I wanted to do this video, but I think it's real important that if you're receiving fish, brand new fish, maybe you're new to the hobby and this is the first time you've done it, don't be worried. Just float the fish, cut the bag, drop them into a container, scoop them up, put them in the tank. It's that easy. If they don't swim correctly, you know to either drain the tank you just put them in halfway down to give them a chance to get righted. Now, if you leave them in a full tank, they'll probably get better, but it'll just take them a lot longer to do so. In a tank that's half full, you got a lot less pressure on there, on top of them. So they'll be able to right themselves a lot faster. And the faster they can right themselves, the less stress is involved, and they'll just be stressed out less. But anyway, I do appreciate you hanging through this with me this long. Please leave your comments. Tell me what you think about this video, whether you agree or disagree or hate it or don't. And please subscribe and then click the bell for notifications, because I will be releasing more and more videos like this out there. My next video is probably going to be more about how to take care of them once you get them and things like that. But please subscribe, and please like us, and have a wonderful, great day. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.